In June of 2011, the FBI finally found the man it had been hunting for 16 years. He was 81 years old. He was living near the Pacific Ocean, and when agents searched his apartment, they found more than $800,000 in cash, more than 30 firearms, and false identification. His name was James Whitey Bulger. To the public, he was a ghost from Boston's underworld. To federal prosecutors, he was the former leader of the Winter Hill Gang, a man whose criminal network spread through South Boston during the 1970s and 1980s. Extortion, loan sharking, drug trafficking, firearms, and murder. But to the FBI, Whitey Bulger was something more complicated. He was not just the man they were chasing. He was a man they had once protected. South Boston was the kind of place where everyone knew your name before you entered a room. A neighborhood of alleys, parish bells, corner bars, and old loyalties. In that world, Whitey Bulger learned the value of silence. Silence could protect you. Silence could condemn someone else. Silence could build an empire. Bulger rose through Boston's criminal world as the city's underworld was changing. The Italian mafia still held power. Irish gangs fought for territory, and federal law enforcement wanted informants close enough to hear whispers before they became bodies. The FBI's strategy was simple in theory: use criminals to catch bigger criminals. But in Boston, that strategy became something darker. In 1975, according to a congressional report, FBI agent John Connolly recruited James Whitey Bulger as an informant. Connolly served as Bulger's handler until 1990. The relationship was supposed to be controlled. A handler, an informant, information flowing upward. But power does not always move in the direction written on paper. Federal investigators would later describe a world where lines blurred, where gangsters knew too much, where law enforcement looked away too often, where information meant survival. Bulger gave the FBI information. The FBI gave Bulger something even more valuable: space. For years, Bulger operated in plain sight. His gang intimidated business owners and bookmakers. They used threats and violence. They made money through fear. Federal prosecutors later said his criminal enterprise was responsible for 11 murders. But the most unsettling part of the story is not simply that Bulger killed. It is that his victims and enemies were living in a world where the government's shadow sometimes seemed to fall behind him. In stories like this, people want a clean villain, a monster, a badge, a city that looked away. But the Bulger case refuses to stay clean. It is not just a mob story. It is an institutional story. A story about what happens when the state makes a bargain with violence and then loses track of who is using whom. By late 1994, the walls were closing in. Federal prosecutors say Bulger fled Massachusetts after learning of an impending indictment. The man who had haunted Boston vanished. Not in a dramatic escape. No shootout, no chase under sirens, just disappearance. A door closing, a city left behind. For 16 years, the FBI searched. They followed leads, they chased rumors, they checked sightings that dissolved into nothing. Bulger became one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. A man from South Boston turned into a national phantom, but the hunt carried an embarrassment inside it, because every poster asked the same silent question. How do you catch a fugitive who once understood your system from the inside? How do you find a man who knew how agents thought, how informants worked, how pressure moved through the machine? How do you chase your own shadow? The breakthrough did not come from a dramatic raid. It came from Catherine Greig, Bulger's longtime companion had fled with him. The FBI realized that chasing Bulger directly had failed. So they changed the lens. They focused on Greg's habits, appearance, and routines. A public campaign targeted people who might recognize her, not mobsters, not street informants, but women who might see her at a beauty parlor, a doctor's office, a place where ordinary life leaves traces. The campaign worked. Tips came in. One of them pointed agents towards Santa Monica. On June 22, 2011, surveillance began. Agents watched two elderly people who appeared to match the fugitives. Then, they used a ruse to lure Bulger out of his apartment. He was arrested without incident. After 16 years, the ghost was not hiding in a bunker. He was not surrounded by loyal soldiers. He was an old man in California, living under another name, close enough to the ocean to hear the evening traffic soften into waves. Inside the apartment were guns, cash, false identities, the tools of a fugitive who had planned for every ending except this one. In 2013, Bulger went to trial in Boston. The case lasted 2 months. The jury convicted him of racketeering conspiracy and numerous racketeering acts, including murder, extortion, narcotics distribution, money laundering, and firearms possession. The verdict held him responsible for 11 murders, 11 names, 11 families, 11 absences that no arrest could reverse. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, plus 5 years. The judge called the scope and depravity of his crimes almost unfathomable. But justice in this story arrived with a strange aftertaste. Because Bulger's capture solved the manhunt, it did not solve the question: how much damage can be done by a criminal? And how much more when institutions decide he is useful? Former FBI agent John Connolly was later sentenced to prison for breaking the law to protect Bulger and Stephen Flemmi, another gangster informant, according to the congressional record. Years later, even the record around Connolly would continue to produce dispute and litigation, with Bulger's own writings becoming part of renewed arguments over blame and responsibility. That is the final fog around Whitey Bulger. The facts are brutal. The implications are worse. The FBI hunted Bulger across continents, false names, dead leads, and quiet apartments. But the deeper chase was never only geographic. It was moral. A chase through the hidden rooms of law enforcement, through the bargain between order and corruption, through the old belief that evil can be managed, so long as it is pointed in the right direction. Whitey Bulger died in prison in 2018. In 2024, a former mafia hitman was sentenced to 25 years for killing him in his cell. Reuters reported that other inmates had referred to Bulger as a snitch. It was a fittingly bleak ending. Not redemption, not revelation, just another locked room, another body, another institution explaining what happened after it was already too late. The story of Whitey Bulger is often told as the story of a gangster who escaped justice. But maybe it is really the story of a system that recognized him too late. First as an asset, then as a liability, then as a fugitive, then as evidence. For 16 years, the FBI searched for Whitey Bulger, and when they finally found him, they found more than a man. They found the shape of a bargain, a ghost made by crime, fed by secrecy, and chased at last by the very people who had once opened the door.